Happy Friday, guys, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Dubs. I'm your host, Bill T. Well, today's Friday, and you know what that means. I'm bringing you another podcast for your listening pleasure. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I'm not. I'm inviting you to the best time of your life, which is One Crazy Weekend, taking place October 3rd through the 5th at the Orleans Hotel and Casino. We're going to have, for the early birds to get there, there'll be some Thursday adventures that will be announced soon, as well as Friday's meet and greet and strip cruise. We also have the car show on Saturday where there's going to be a special award for cars that are debuting there at the show. If you got something you've been working on for a long time and you're looking for the spot to debut your car, Vegas is the place. There's definitely a special award that's going to be being built by Buddy Hale. We'll be having Buddy on the podcast here soon just to talk about car shows and things in general so we can get an understanding of the passion behind making this award. We've also got Spike's pick as well as best of show and People's Choice. And also there's going to be a top 20 picked. So there's definitely lots of cool stuff to get with that. Not to mention the world famous poker run. That's right. Get your chance to win, get your hands on a portion of at least $3,000 if I'm not figured out more to give away. So we're excited to do that. I love to have you guys out there in your cars doing some adventurous things and bringing home some cash. It's a great time. Every year, the winners have just loved it. Best hand wins a pile of cash, and second place, third place also. And for those of you that have no luck, we do have some surprise opportunities for you to have an opportunity to win a little bit of cash as well. So it's a great time. Go to letstalkdubs.com now. Book your rooms at the Orleans Hotel and Casino. Very affordable, safe parking, free trailer parking, and the VWs will be secured in the lot. So 24-hour security, no need to worry about that. It's safe as could be. It's cool as a fan, and the hotel really loves the VW enthusiasts. So make sure you guys go book your rooms today before they're sold out. I'm warning you, book your rooms today. Quick example. Last year, rooms were really affordable. Room cutoff was like 30 days before the event for the blocked rooms. We sold a ton of rooms. The day after, there was a Notre Dame game in town the same day as my event. The room rate shot up to $400 a night. Do yourself a favor and book your rooms today at the Orleans Hotel Casino. Go through the link at letstalkdubs.com. Pay for your show registration, pay for your entry into the world famous poker run, and make sure that you get set up to go to One Crazy Weekend. So I'm excited for that, having just come back from the caravan, which is a little longer than a weekend, and it was a great time. I had a great opportunity to spend a lot of time with people from Europe, and it was a lifetime of an experience. It was once in a lifetime experience. It was just a great place to hang out with a lot of really good people and enjoy the scene like it should be behind the wheel of your Volkswagen, cruising around. Although mine, thanks to my boy Andy Finch, who, if you're not watching, has been restoring my Type 34 Ghia. That will also debut, not eligible for an award, at One Crazy Weekend. It's going to be a great car. I'm excited. I'm excited for you guys to see Zorba the Ghia and check out the Greekest Ghia you've ever seen, and it's going to be pretty devastating. So I'm excited for that to come out. And he's also coming out. He's going to be bringing his He's going to be bringing his 21 window Samba out, which is pin straight, devastating, but you can tell she's put some miles on her because he drives that thing everywhere. Looking so fresh and clean on its 16-inch alloys. He and I will be cruising our cars around after the show, during the show, whenever, because we're all about it. So best thing is you get a chance to be there. There's people from all over the world coming, East Coast, West Coast, down south, Midwest. Everybody's going. Everybody's going to be at One Crazy Weekend. So make sure, if you've lost your love for the hobby, you make sure you come to One Crazy Weekend. You'll find your love. And even if you fly in town, let's say, and you just want to be part of the event and you can't bring a car and you've got some logistics you need to deal with, listen, it's Vegas. It's fun. The rooms are cheap. Hang out with some VW people. You know how we are. You're guaranteed to make some friends. Come down, check it out, and you will have the time of your life. That, I assure you, will get you seated in somebody's car for the poker run and the strip cruise. There's always room for people in people's cars for doing great, fun stuff like this here in Las Vegas. And the only place you can cruise, the world famous Las Vegas Boulevard. So I'm excited. It's I can't tell you enough how every year it's just grown, and it's because it's really as organic as it gets. Everybody tells their friend and like, dude, you got to come to Vegas. It's the best, and it just keeps growing. So be part of it while it's early because it's getting bigger, bigger, bigger every year. This is our 4th year. I'm really excited about it. It's put on by me, the Wagon, Las Vegas Volkswagen Club, and really a community effort of our Las Vegas VW scene, the core guys that make things happen here, just trying to make sure that we're bringing you guys Vegas at its best. So make sure you guys go to letstalkdubs.com and get registered today, now, on today's podcast. There's always something special about your first car. You guys notice if you're on my Instagram or Facebook, you've seen I put out a APB for one of my quote unquote first cars, which was really my first finished car that, things happened and transpired as I was building that car, had so much money into it, finally finished the motor, and then just got super frustrated and sold it. And I live with regret ever since that day. I put it out an APB looking for that thing. And, I've had a bunch of listeners reach out, give me whatever information they could track down on it. It's an amazing community. And just haven't been able. I went on a search one day and just drove out to a bunch of neighborhoods looking for my car, and nowhere to be found. It's like a detective story. One day I'll find that car and get it back. But the sentimental value of your original car and the debate of building a recreation or finding the exact car. And sometimes I equate it to like a girlfriend, right? An ex-girlfriend, that the memories when she's gone were only the best. And then you get it back and it's like, oh man, there's a reason I broke up with her, or there's a reason that I sold this car because of this, this, and this. But, with age and maturity and all those things, sometimes it's different. You have a different viewpoint or vantage point when you get that car back. So there's something really special about your first car and all the things you did to it. And what's funny is you look back and you might mock yourself and say, oh, I did that. That was cheesy, or that was this. Well, after a while, long enough, it becomes cool. Things you did in the 80s that they laughed at in the 90s are now in the 2020s the cool thing to do. The wink mirrors, the baby turbos and stuff like that. And the cowlook scene's always been pretty solid with leaving a mark on what's truly traditionally cowlook. And it's as much as people try to pigeonhole it in a real small gap, it's really a wide variety of things that they used to do, the enthusiasts used to do. And it was kind of varied all over the board. And if you want to deep dive in some of the history, you can go back to some of the Greg Aronson podcasts and, Ron Fleming, John Lazenby, a lot of the early cowlook guys, and they'll give you, and everyone's going to give you a different angle of their version of the cowlook. Now we have the quintessential, and also don't forget Burley Burlow, who's been on the podcast twice and is the gentleman who drew the artwork for the cowlook diagram. So that's courtesy of Burley Burlow. And, you'll notice some things are in fashion, some things are not. Some things are hard to find, and some things were cool for a minute. That makes them even more rare. In this podcast, I sit down with Dean Kirsten, who happened to be on the cowlook Caravan. And it was a pretty special event because if you've noticed in the magazine, they've been building an engine for quite a while, a 1700cc motor that him and Ron Fleming had built and put together, and it was for a project that Russel Richie was working on, which was to build a recreation of Dean's first car, Dean's cowlook 67, factory blue, VW blue, and it was a car that meant a lot to Dean and a lot of fond memories. Well, when we turned up for the cowlook Caravan, this car was there, this recreation of Dean's first car. Dean Kirsten is an incredible guy. He's contributed so much to the hobby. He's a guy that loves this hobby no matter what. There's some people that are kind of fair weather VW fans, and unless it's something for them, they're in it or they're out. Dean loves this hobby to the core. He loves this hobby because it was such a huge part of his life. From his early enthusiast beginning to having the luck of working for the magazine for so many years and just being entrenched in working in his passion. And this car in particular is a recreation of his first car. So it's a great podcast to hear the story of his first car, what it's like to show up and look at a recreation of your car, the emotions, the feelings, not to mention, more importantly, what it was like and how close it is And does it feel like your original car? Does it feel like, does it feel like a simulation? That whole experience and the process of him building and the painstaking process of them following this car to the letter, to the actual diagrams that were sent to copy the interior. So it's a great story, and Dean's always one of my favorite guests to have on the podcast. So I'm happy to bring you guys this podcast because it's one of those that I was excited to be able to sit down and do and get this information and really have Dean tell the story of his first car. So it's a great story. It was a cool experience to watch him drive this car 1,000 miles across Europe and bomb this thing down the highway at 1,700 with 48 IDAs on his Dino wheels. It was a rad time, and you'll be seeing it in a video I have coming up. I'm in the middle of editing right now. It's an hour and a half, and I'm chopping it down. I might have to cut it up into 2 videos, about 30 minutes each once I chop out a bunch of stuff. But I have an entire video on the Cowlook Caravan, and there's some video footage in there of Dean tinkering with this thing, and there's a lot of fun stuff going on. So I'm excited for you guys to hear the story. It's a great story. It's one you'll love for sure. And I just wanted to be able to let it out this week. Dean will also be on a podcast, the podcast that Ron Fleming does. The name doesn't come to me right now, but you can check it out on his YouTube channel, and that'll be this weekend. So it'll be a great accompaniment after you hear this one first, get the whole in-depth story, and then you get to listen to Dean tell's experience about the Cowlook Caravan. So it was definitely a great time. Memories I'll cherish for a long time, to be able to do all these things with a guy I consider a friend of mine. And I'm excited to bring you guys this. So without any further ado, guys, let's get into it. Your first car, what happened to it? What's it like when you see it again? And how the experience was to drive it across Europe. This week's podcast, Dean Kirsten and the Blue 67 on Let's Talk Dubs.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen. It's got everything that people who like the bug like.
Okay, everybody, so this is another podcast from EBI, and this one's pretty special because I'm with the first guy that's ever been on Let's Talk Dubs 3 times, and that was Dean Kirsten. Dean, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be back. Each time we talk about another subject, so I think we're exploring yet another idea.
Yeah, so this particular EBI for you has been fairly special. There's been a project on... You're driving a car that is pretty much the identical car that you had when you were how old?
I was 22 when I built my first Cowlook edition. My first 67 I bought in 1972, so I was a little over 20 years old.
Yeah,
in school, and so that's the car that really got me into the industry.
And now this car that we're talking about. This car has the engine that you and Ron were building in the past few issues of Hobby Dub. Is that correct?
Yes. So when the idea that there was an engine needed for this car, the sources were over here in England, and the more I thought about it, back in when I was looking part-time for Ron Fleming and Brave Aronshades. It was Fleming and Aronson. It wasn't even fat then. And Ron pretty much showed me how to split the case and build the bottom end. I didn't know how to do that then. So he helped me build that first 1700 that I had in that first 67. And so looking back at that, when this project came up, I said, I'd like to do that over again and build an engine very similar. And I asked Ron, I said, I know you're retired, you don't want to build engines anymore, but how about this one? And he said, absolutely. The fact that we used to work together, and he said, I'd be happy to hear.
Now, interestingly enough, if you used to be, so we may have talked about that in your first podcast, but when you went over there to start working with them, was this when they had a shop, or this was when they were still in his mom's garage?
No, this is afterwards. So this is over on Howell Street. They were in two different units in Howell Street. So this is the second of the two. So like I said, this was like 72, 73, this was going on. And they were in Anaheim, right by Angel Stadium there. And I was going to school in Fullerton. And so a lot of times after school, after I had my morning classes up, I would go over and hang out. And one day I asked Greg if I could work there to work for parts. And he said, sure, sounds good to me. And so I started working there part-time.
And what type of stuff did they have you doing?
I was the grunt work, because I had a rough idea what to do, but certainly not to the level they had. And so I was pretty much cleaning parts and taking engines apart and setting up the parts up in the workbench. And I did some service work on cars, although I didn't really like working on customers' cars, but mostly just kind of helping them prepare an engine so they could put it together.
So you would be the parts cleaner?
Yeah,
kind of
bottom of the road all down. Yep.
And how long was the span of time they worked there?
A few years.
A few years, just coming in part-time, whatever you had done?
Yeah, yep.
And that was just kind of the staple of the hobby, right? Like everything, it was because you're working there and the guys were in clubs at that time and that's kind of the scene going on. It was just kind of, you were hanging out at the place that everybody wanted to be.
Absolutely. So it was the center of the world there, especially before the bug-ins, because everybody would be dynoing their engines or, freshening their cars up just like they are today. And so the amount of enthusiasm and activities prior to the bug-ins in Orange County was the best of times.
Now this car that you're driving, now you've been on the Gala Caravan with us since Wolfsburg, and when
right.
Cars were delivered.
Right.
And then that's the first time you saw this car.
Yeah. No, just to give a little background on it, is my original 67 that I built was in the February 75 issue of Hot VW, our first California look issue. And right after that, I sold it to Julie Martin. She had it for a few years and sold it. That was sitting there. The car was stolen. And so it was never recovered. And I think that's around 1978, 79. So the car is gone. And so that the last time I saw my original car was February 75. And so now we found...
Well, coincidentally, the month of the Catholic issue, right?
That's it.
February 75.
No, I sold it when the magazine came out, yeah. I put a stock engine in it, and it was sold by the middle. The issue was still on the newsstand when Julie bought it.
And you raced that car? No. Weekend, or it was just a street?
It was it was my only transportation, so I had to make it run. So I needed it to drive it. I was working in Santa Ana. I had a print shop, and so it had to run. And so the drag racing was not in the picture, because if I broke it, I'd be screwed and I couldn't fix it.
So it had a stock transaction.
Yes, always did.
So put a stock motor in it, just made it a stock, and you sold it with the wheels on it?
Yes.
And what'd you get for? Do you remember what you sold the car for?
I sold it for $1,800.
That's a lot. A new Beetle was $2,200 back then.
But yet, if I would have kept the big engine in it with the Webers and all that, I probably wouldn't have got any more. And nobody wanted it. But if I put a stock engine in it, then it changed it. And so that's why Mike, when her husband saw it and said, I think this is a great car for Julie. And that she said, yeah, as long as it's not a Gonzo motor in it. I said, no, it's just a stock 1600. She said, dealer.
So this car, once it was, and it's one thing if it's like it got sold to one guy, then sold to another, and then junked in a yard or whatever. But it's something different, I think, if it gets stolen. It's a different feel for a car.
Yeah, it's like, when we lose something, and nobody really knew the story behind it. It was never recovered. Three of the wheels turned up in Palmdale years later.
And those were
Dino's wheel.
Dino's wheel.
And I had marked them.
Oh, you marked
I had put a little X by the valve stem.
On the inside of the wheel?
Not on the outside.
Oh, really?
I just took a scratcher and put a little X on all right next to the valve stem. And so
did you do that in case they got stolen? Or? You did? Sure. Because, I mean, if we part of the thing that helps our listeners understand, what's going on at that time is back in those days, everyone's got a Volkswagen, and getting them stolen because they're probably pretty much the easiest car to steal is a pretty common thing. So it would make sense that you'd mark those things because as a kid, you put all your money in buying these wheels. Last thing you want is somebody ended up stealing them. And then there's not a lot of sets of those out in the street, right?
No. And then we always use wheel locks. You had a locking deck lid, you had wheel locks on them, and because it was always in the back of our mind that they were going to get snitched.
So 3 wheels ended up in Palmdale.
Yeah, and they came up for sale, and when I saw the markings, that's it. So that's the only thing left of the car.
And and if your thought was that the car was still available, there'd be part of you wanting to track the car down. But I think there's kind of that thing of once it's stolen, it feels like it's final. Like you'll never see it again.
Pretty much. And I had moved on to the reason I sold it was I built a sand rail, and I kept so I used the engine into the Webbers. I made it bigger, and I was in the sand dunes for the next 5 or 6 years, and so I just didn't want to go back. I've been arrested for no bumpers.
Arrested?
Oh yeah,
arrested for no bumpers.
Yeah,
real.
Yeah, failure to appear on a fix-it ticket.
Wow.
And too low, was too loud. It made too much emissions, and I just got tired of being rousted all the time.
Right.
Yeah, I was done with a sand rail. You could do crazy things in the day.
You're kind of moving on. It was like a chapter.
So it was, and DKP had pretty much disbanded.
Yeah, we talked about that for a minute, which I think is maybe also an important part of the story, because you were saying that you had joined DKP 2 it was DKP 1. So it was DKP 1 that you would join, and this is what year is this?
So I started going to the meetings in 73 through 74, but by the time my car was done, so now we're talking maybe late summer, fall, the club was pretty much coming apart. They didn't want to have the clubhouse on Chestnut Street anymore, and club was kind of splitting in half. And so then they started meeting at either Fleming and Aronson or the Hayden brothers, and it just kind of fell apart. So here I am. I'm the next guy in line.
Super excited to join the club.
And then
I'm going to get my jacket. I'll be one of the guys. This is going to be cool. And then
so Arnie's car, which is here today, Arnie's real car, he was the last person to be voted in DKP 1.
And that's the Savannah Bay?
That's it, right there with the real BRMs on it. And so he was the last, and I was the next guy in line, and then club's gone.
And at this time, the club's gone, the scene's kind of starting to water down a little bit, you're moving on, you're getting the sand cars, all that stuff. And so this is kind of a chapter that you see kind of closing, you're moving on to that, and this is about the time that you start photographing for, you're working for the magazine at this point?
Yeah, just starting to. Yeah, and so that became, kind of my new priority, yeah. So, but I really, kind of put it in the back of my mind, and I think until Keith Soom's club came out, which really put a emphasis on those cars, and he was able to run some pictures of the car and tell a little bit more of my story. That's when the interest level started coming back for me and a lot of other people. And so it's all in the back of my mind that, yeah, I was fortunate to be in that first Cal Look issue. There's a lot of other nice cars out there, but I always thought, that it really started a lot of my connection with IPW Magazine too.
Now, because we've got a lot of listeners all over, are there any distinct features of your blue 67 that would identify it as your car? I'm just putting an Easter egg out there to these guys.
No, really? Other than the VIN number, but, which I have, and we've done VIN searches on it and it's gone. There's nothing really unique, not like the Baton car where it had some one-off parts on. It was pretty much a stock body. It had shaved chrome on the trim on the sides, on the hood, and it had Lucas turn signals in front, but the exhaust cutouts were filled in, and there's a lot of modifications that I did not do because I couldn't afford them. The dash had a few things filled in, but it was real common stuff. So no, if that body was sitting in the corner, rusting or a different color, there'd be no way I would know it.
So this car, where is the genesis of the idea of this car come from?
So now we flash forward to 2023, and we are in Aberdeen, Scotland, at Russel Richie's house, and we're picking up the Darrell Vitone modified compact drag car and the Dave Andrews tribute car, and we're going to take him to the Volkswagen shed. And that's, I think, in March of 23. And while we're at his shop, he asked me, he goes, Dino, how come you never built a duplicate of your old car? And I just told him I wasn't interested. I wanted to do something else. And he says, what if I do it? And I thought, oh, that's an interesting question. And then he points behind him, and there's a Savannah Bay California car that he had just bought, stock. And he says, that car right there, we'll use that car, and you tell me what to do, I will build an exact duplicate. And that's how it's.
Now, and what's interesting is there's a ton of detail that's gone into the process of building this as close to how it was when you first had it. I mean, we're talking from stereos to speaker grills to wheels to everything. So the build on this car, what were some of the biggest challenges or things that you thought there's no way we're going to be able to duplicate on this?
I think probably the most difficult was the handline engine turn thresholds and kick pads. Ernie Handline's been gone a long time, and the company now doesn't make them anymore. They don't want to make the Volkswagen stuff. And so I told Russell, I said, the wheels we can find, the steering wheel, the shifter, and all that stuff. And I said, but those thresholds are going to be impossible to find. And so that's when Jason Clark came into the picture. Now, Jason Clark is in England, and he's a hell of a machinist. And on his red car, 67, he made his own threshold from pictures, and they were gorgeous. And so when this project got started, I reached out to Jason. I said, told him that we're building a tribute car, and Russell is doing it, and would you do thresholds? And because he doesn't like doing them because they're really difficult. He said, for your car, Dino, we got it. So that kind of fixed that question. And then the rest of the parts, I mean, the Modellita steering wheel, they still make those to order.
They do. I've never even heard of a Modellita steering wheel.
Over here, you just don't see them much.
And so where'd you buy that wheel and back in?
Directly from Modellita here in England, and then had it shipped back to California.
Like you were here, or you wrote a letter, ordered a wheel?
Yeah, online. Went online. So they said, okay, what they goes.
Well, I'm not talking about today. Back
in the day, I got it from MG Mitten in Pasadena.
Okay.
So the original wheel was a molded, same wheel that's in there now, that came from MG Mitten in Pasadena. That the original stainless was Ernie Handline. I went to his house and got him, and it had a Dino shifter. I think I probably got that from Auto House probably. And then you mentioned the stereo. Now the stereo was really something. I had an 8-track. I know a lot of you guys don't even know what an 8-track stereo was. So it was an 8-track Craig 8-track model 3140 unit. And I had pictures of it. I first had to identify it, and I said, no, I got to identify it. So I started watching eBay, and there was a lot of Craig stereos on there, and most of them are just trashed. And so one day, this guy had one for sale, and it says not working or untested for $25. I said, I'm in. So I bought that one. And then a couple of weeks later, a guy had 2 units. One of them was the right model and another one. And he says, bought an estate sale. Don't know if they work or not. And I think it was $40 for those 2. So I pieced parts from the 2 and made one good one.
Really?
So I took the face off of one, the dials off another, a dial off of this, and I was able to kind of mix match parts, and I got to work.
As fully functional?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, actually, AM, FM, the balance works. The tone changes there. The push buttons for the AM, FM rate, it all worked. So then the next step was I had Craig chrome speakers under the rear seat, delete.
Right by the heater, by the heater vent.
Yeah.
That little,
And so then I had to start finding where the heck am I? And most speakers, of that ages are history.
yeah.
And one day on eBay, a box of NOSman shows up.
No way. How much they sell for?
Well, he started at like $20, and it was no.
It was an offer.
And I said, "Oh, I gotta have these." And I just sent him a private message. Says, "I'll give you $70 for them." And he goes, "Sold." And he took it off eBay. And so they were still in the box with the original wiring. They were perfect.
Really?
So between the two of them, I was able to duplicate the sound system, and it had Stewart water gauges. So I had to find those are all eBay stuff. What else? The Dino shifter. The Dino shifters always broke the plastic handles, and so finding a Dino shifter that isn't broken is pretty difficult. Well, later in life, Dino solved the problem with NPR by making an aluminum handle. And those came over on a container with NPR 92s and the oil pumps. And the Lowry's NPR were battling about some issues about the 92s, and they turned it down. So we're not cooking this up. And so what happened was the container got sold to SCAT. So SCAT started selling these Dino shifters as SCAT shifters for $39.95. And they were the second generation. They solved the problem. They were the best shifter ever made, but they didn't sell that many of them. And Scott Postuma, a friend of ours, he had one brand new. He said, "Dino, I don't know what to do with this. I'm not going to build another car." And he said, "Why don't you put this in display for this?" I said, "Yeah, no problem." And then when this came up, I was like, "Oh, that's got it for it."
Right.
To solve that problem. The engine has a Dino sump. Found that through the Sama community. It's got early bird linkage, Dino intake manifolds, 010 distributor, and just all the old stuff, and just found it all.
Now, you didn't have a name for the car, any of that kind of stuff? And
No, the only name that I had still have the original show sign that Dennis Jones lettered for me back in the day. I never knew what the color was, because it's the original VW color.
Right.
And so some guy told me, "Dean, that's called sapphire blue." So of course I called it sapphire blue. And so that's what I always told people until years later. I go, "No, that's called VW blue." I go, "You got it. That's not the color. That's not the name of that color." Look at it. And sure enough. So, that was the name. I never called it that, but the show sign said that.
Now, the motor that you built, that you and Ron built, it's a 1700. What's the people can see the details in Hot Beaters magazine, but for those that don't get it, what's the specs on the motor?
So the reason back in the day, stroker cranks were kind of voodoo. A lot of were, you got to grind the case, and the pistons come out too far, and it was just some unknown sign, not like today, but you don't have that kind of common knowledge. And so I didn't want to put a stroker crank. I couldn't afford it, and I didn't have the wherewithals to do it. So 1700s or 1835s that's what we did. And so this is a stock crank, 69 millimeters, stock VW 5.4 rods, and 88 millimeter pistons. The original ones were Colben Schmidt, but they haven't made the years. And so the new motor that we built, we used a lot of MP stuff. We use it MP. They're one of the new magnesium cases, a forged counterweighted crank, which is better than I ever had. We use their I-beam rods.
You just had a stock crank in yours.
Yeah, and a doweled. And then the pistons and cylinders are AA88s, but they're kind of a hybrid because they slip into the case without machine work, which you didn't see too much then. But the top lip is extra thick, and you have to bore the heads to 92, so you've got a much thicker top. You do have to bore the heads, but it's a really nice piston cylinder setup.
And what compression were you running on it?
I would say back in the day I was over 9 because we had Chevron white tank, but so I know I was probably way over 9. This engine I was shooting for 9, but by the time the deck height and everything, we were probably 8.7 now.
And what camshaft did you have in it?
Always an angle 110.
Just a 110.
Yeah.
This was just a comfortable stoplight user. You're not running somebody a quarter mile, you're going to beat them across the intersection.
They were going to, I didn't have the heads for the higher RPM, so it didn't seem any, and everybody used those cams.
And what about heads? Any?
So back in the day, I had dual port heads on it. We had big intake valves, and Ron and I ported them. Ron would show me, he'd give me the grinder when I was there at the shop, and he said, okay, do this, and I'll do this. And between the two of them, and then he did the valve job and set up the spring. So the original heads were just some rough and tumble self-ported heads.
Stock valves?
Big intakes, 40 millimeter intake.
Nice. So you drove this car for about a week. When you first saw this car, what was going through your mind?
Well, I don't really. I it didn't seem possible.
Really?
It just. I was trying to prepare myself.
Yeah.
Geez, that was great things I hate this about.
And it is exact.
Like you got goosebumps when you saw it.
Oh,
like,
absolutely. I still do.
because you're looking at it and you're like, that's my car. It's my car sitting there. And it's like, I think when we're young, we find that first car, we have all this passion wound up, and we have these visions like, I'm keeping this car forever. I'm never going to sell it. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then obviously our moods and our point in life change. And then to see it back there, sitting there, I mean, it's got to be an incredible feeling. And then to top all that off, to take it on a cross Europe
crazy deal. So, and Russell he only gave me little photos of it. He never gave me overalls. So when Gavin Jones, who did the paint down in England, when he was working on it, he'd show me a fender, or we're working on the dash or something like that. But I never really got I kept asking for overall shot, and they never would because they were teasing me. And so I only saw bits and pieces of it. And so I saw the pan being put together. He would send me pictures with questions and stuff like that. So I was getting pictures here and there, and then we'd have conversations on the phone. I got, what did we do here? And Gavin was such a perfectionist. He said, okay, did we fill this? Did we do that? Did you have this? And how did this fit? And, and we had to pre-cut the dash to get the stereo to fit. And I had to send him the stereo to make sure it would fit. And so we went to a lot of details on all the photos that I had laying around of what about this? What about that? And so that's how the car went together. And it was a million questions. And luckily, my memory was, I think, sharp enough that I remembered everything.
I remember I want to say it's about 6 months to a year ago, you showed me some sketches for the interior.
Yeah, so the original interior was a Brad's interiors. And so it was a biscuit interior. So we used...
Now, 2 seconds. For some of our non-California listeners, right?
Yeah.
When that car's in California, it just so happened that there's paint by this guy, interior by this guy, and usually did engines and transmissions by these type of people. Who was the setup on your typical California?
So back in the day, you had to have a Becker. Leonard Becker was over off of Catalan or LaSalle, excuse me. And he was the guy. He painted a lot of the DKP cars, and he would fill the chrome in, and he knew what we wanted, and the paint job were really good. And so that's who you would go to on paint. And then down in Orange, Don Bradco, Brad's upholstery, he was the guy. And he would do what they call a biscuit interior. And we didn't invent it, but he kind of perfected it, and they kind of applied it to both.
So that's a good question, right? So was Brad, because you guys are all just a bunch of punk teen kids, early 20s, going to get your upholstery, like, hey, Brad, you're a upholstery dad. What should I do to be cool in this car? And he's like, do a biscuit. Like, is he influencing the scene indirectly from, like, him being the guy and saying, this is what you got to do, and then someone gets it done by him, and they're like, oh, I'm getting that. And
well, he also considered what type of car you're building. Obviously, it's custom. And he knew that this maniacs at DKP and Fleming and Harrison, this is what they like. They like kind of stock factory colors. And so he just said, I saw John Lazenby's car, I saw other cars, and I told him that I kind of want something like that. Brad was cool enough where he would say, well, Lazenby's, his biscuits are 2x2, and we did 3 rows down the centers at 12-inch disc, and he goes, and such did, Mahaffey's car is this, but he goes, I never want to do 2 of this like, so we'd always come up with, how about 3x4, and we'd draw it out. So that's how the interior happened. So using photographs that I had, I did basically a blueprint of the door panels and the seat. And so by scaling them in Photoshop, I figured out the dimensions of the biscuits, the width of the center insert, the width of the double stitching, and I pretty well mapped it out for Sand Trig. And so the front seats, the rear door panels, and so he saw the drawings, and he asked me, okay, what thread are we using? And I said, no, what stitch count? And we went through everything. And there were 64 seats, not 67 seats, so there were flat tops. And do you want French stitching or do you want welting? And so, I mean, we went through every detail, and he nailed it. It is, I hate to say it, it's better than Brad.
Now, why did it have 64 seats instead of 67 seats?
I didn't like the way 67 seats. I didn't like the shape of them. They're more contoured, and they have the roll round top. I just didn't like the way they look. And when they put the cool upholstery, I didn't like that. Whereas a 64, I would call it a flat top seat. And because 65, then they started to round them off more. And I just liked the look for them. And so when Brad did my car, I bought out some curly seats, and he said, yeah, I can do it.
So the fabric for the interior.
So when I went to Brad originally, like I said, this is like 73, and we were looking at his fabric quotes on inserts. Okay, it's gonna be a black interior with blue or something. And so we're going,
Well, obviously it's the blue. What was it?
Sapphire blue.
Sapphire blues.
And so we're looking at his upholstery books from Acme and everything, and he says, let's go have lunch, and we'll go to this place in Santa Ana. So we drove down to Santa Ana on May Street, and it's A1 Fabric, and it's an old supermarket, and the place is huge. And so we went through all the rolls of stuff and picked it out. I go, that's it. So that's where the fabric came from. And so when this project started with Russel Richie, I go, well, I know where to get the fabric. So I went back.
They're still around.
They're still around, big as ever. So I asked the guy about blue, and he pulls out some stuff, and I'm looking at the book, and I'm like, nah, that's not it. So then I asked another guy who'd been there a million years, and then he goes, wait a minute. So we go down this aisle, he gets a ladder, he goes way up on top, and then he pulls out this roll. That's it.
The same roll.
Well, it could be because there was only 3 yards left, but it's the exact material. It's not close. It is the material. And so he said, well, how many yards? I said, I need 2 yards. He goes, well, it looks like there's about 3. I go, I'll take it. And I sent that picture to Russell, and he about freaked out. He goes, Toby, that's the rating that I'm like this.
I mean, and as soon as you can see it, because it's such a big deal for you when you get your upholstery in your car, because you're saving up your money, you get it done, and you're just like, then when you show up to the car, it's like, check out my new interior, check out my... So you're like obsessed with it, and it's funny because some people that maybe aren't car people think, how could you know the detail that it's the exact... Because in your mind's eye, it's got the same glitter look when you roll over the velour and all that stuff. So it's actually fine. You know, it's a testament to these shops that just don't get rid of stuff and they keep everything there.
And you got to find shops like that that've been around a long time. And so I sent so this project was being built. It was being built in the U.S. With doing the engine and me building all the goofy parts. Russel Richie's in Scotland, and he's doing all the assembly work, and the upholstery and the paint is being done in England. So this is going on simultaneously at the same. There was a lot going on, and to get it done for them.
It's a really cool car. It's like it's a traditional cowboy car, and it's something when you look at it, it fits the mold of everything that's contemporary. And what's interesting is that's the car that Nima drove, built identical to the car that you drove, and had to be your daily drive there.
But it's just like the window rubber. Now, the original stock window rubber had little trim, aluminum trim,
and stop for the quarter window, and your car one-piece windows.
And now that was later on.
Okay.
That was after Julie did that. So it's still got vent wings on it. So we built it to February 75 specs. That was April 75 when the Ernie Handling stainless dash went in it and one-piece windows. So the trim for the windshield, the quarter windows, and the rear window had the factory trim. Well, we just pulled that out, and it became a black trim. Well, that was the genes, if you will, of the California lip rubber that bit came out years later without the trim.
Oh, just dechroming the window.
Yeah, so that's how we did it back then. Well, then they created the rubber without that trim. So this car represents and the naming of California.
Well, it's how it would have been done.
Yes.
Because they didn't make a cowlet.
That's right. That wasn't until years later. That's right.
No.
Yeah, so when I told Russell, I said, when you put the windows in it, don't go out and buy that cowlet rubber from West Coast Metric or whoever. Put stock rubber in it, but don't put the trim in it.
And now there's a couple things I wanted to touch on, and I can't remember if it was you or if it was Greg Aronson that I was speaking to with respect to Becker's Autobahn.
Right.
He had a per hole charge to fill this.
Yeah, with Greg, it was a buckle hole, and they were raised. They didn't. Now, later on, because he had done so many of them by the time he came up to me, they were just doing it hourly. So I would say, okay, I want all the side trim and the hood filled, and he would figure out, okay, that's 92 hours and whatever it is. And so to give you an idea, so my call was, I'd replace some of the fenders, and it had a few dents in it, but nothing great. So we saved the side trim, the hood trim, the emblem on the deck lid, the glove box trim was gone, the grab handle was gone, and we put Lucas turn signal. We didn't fill the bumper hole or anything like that. To do all that and to paint it inside and out with urethane was $350.
$350, and the car. In all reality, the car's 10 years old at the time. 10.
Yeah, so it was never that.
Yeah. It's a scuff and reshoot type thing.
Yeah.
Little touch up, which is another thing that trying to get people back into the mindset of how it was during the cow look days. Like, these were used cars. They weren't vintage cars. They were not that far off from being brand new manufactured. Most of the rubber still decent on it. Now, this one, you've got question I have about the Lucas turn signals. Were the Lucas turn signals picked because you didn't have to modify the hole, or did you have to modify the hole?
Yeah, so you're welding up the 40 holes on both fenders, and then you're re-drilling a new round hole for the Lucas turn signal. And the Lucas turn signal, if you remember, that was a Greg Aronson. He worked at BAP Park and was going through, he wanted to take the turn signals off the top of the fender, and he's going through the parts and said, hey, these kind of generic things that were on MGs and Triumphs and Jaguars and stuff, these things look like it'd be pretty cool. So Greg started that, and so we just followed suit. You just had to have 488s with this turn signal.
And are they still available today?
Yeah, they've reproduced them. Actually, the reproductions are actually fairly damn good.
Really?
Yeah, because when I used to go to the swap meets in England, Wrangly parts years ago, if I saw, and there were a lot of them around, if the glass was good, the original ones, I'd buy them. But some of the reproduction, they were actually even better. So they're not bad at all.
And now you got to, what is the mirrors on the car?
The mirrors on the mirror of choice is a Talbot mirror, and they made a Talbot Junior. Then they made a big, so there was one that's like 3.5 inches and then a 4 inch. And the bigger ones were bigger sedan, but for Porsches and stuff, we used the Junior, and it's a smaller size, but it's got the badge on it. It's got embossed. It says Talbot. So there's a lot of copies out there. Everybody splashes those things, but if you buy an original Talbot mirror, you're paying big bucks in the middle. But back then, they were nothing. That we all had Talbot mirror. So that's what time they.
Now, how old are you?
I'm 72.
So 50 years later.
50 years almost.
A lifetime later, you're in another country, driving your exact vehicle at a car show, surrounded by, what would you guess is here? 500-600 cars? He's just in the cowlook area. The Wilder Dryden year is exploded.
Insane how many.
It's probably 70 cowlook cars.
They're all so well done. Yeah, and they're all from all these different countries, and these guys has got it, man. These cars are so nice. It doesn't, I say it's a Twilight Zone moment. It doesn't seem possible. And I'm driving the car, like, okay,
You know what? I'm glad I got to be on the cruise with you. You know what I mean? It's just been such a blast.
You know, it's weird that it's Russell's car. I mean, it's his car. But, you know, I'm kind of attached to it, man.
I mean, it's one of those things where, you know, you're making this trip because you got your orange car, which is like,
yeah, I
over the top.
Well, you know, I spent 14 years building that, and it's got the coolest stuff and the workmanship, and there's everything is done on it. It's got all the goodies on it, and I could cure it. It just doesn't do anything. Not like those.
Yeah, this is kind of a time capsule type thing.
Yeah, and the power's fine. It's fast as I want to go. It doesn't have a 5-speed. It's got drum brake. And I mean, it's got all the weird idiosyncrasies that we had, and it's fine. You know, the idea of driving at 400 or 500 miles is a little strong. You know, especially when this car was completed on Monday in Wolfsburg, it had no miles on it.
It was completed in the parking lot.
It was in the car. The engine was off the dyno when we dynoed it empty. And that's the way it went in. And the car had no miles. They stuck the motor in it. And in fact, we were coming into the last segment, and we got into some rain. And it wasn't too bad when we got here, and Russell and I were shaking hands like, hey, we made it, you know, got here in one piece. He goes, I got a question for you. Did the white goods work? I said, really? You didn't even know they worked? He goes, well, I don't remember being able to test it. And I said, well, that's nice. It's Howard.
I mean, you know, what's so crazy is in this last week, we've had an opportunity to experience so much from the museums we've gone to, the prototype cars that we've seen, and not to mention be driving on the Autobahn with 20 Cowlick cars all in a row, and just everybody. It's just been such a, you know, there hasn't been very much drama. There's been a couple of the, you know, typical breakdowns and, you know, things that I think we lost two throttle cables and a bunch of other miscellaneous stuff. But overall, it's been quite the experience that, you know, if somebody just wrote this on paper, like, hey, do you guys want to take your car in the middle of summer and drive 150 miles each day, go to some museums and do this, you'd be like, nah, I'm not really up to it. But I think this is, with this culminating at the European Buggy here, you know, and it's the first Cowlick caravan, and there's so many people involved that, you know, especially DFL had such a huge part. Yeah, once they said about some of these experiences that we've had along the way, what's been your favorite part of this whole week?
We're not about it.
Probably the first night. So that would be Monday night. But like you said, we finished this thing in the parking lot, and going to that dinner that we had, the DHL.
Yeah, you know, DHL, the barbecue.
Yeah, so that was like 30 minutes away. And this car had, I think I rolled it up and down the dock once. And so everybody piles in the cars. We were all proven, and that we all just jumped on the cars, and I'm following Bill Schwimmer, and I'm like, you know, figuring this car out and how, you know, the steering and the brakes and the engine and all this stuff. We're just hauling ass on the road, and I'm like, dang, it's just crazy. And I think that was the moment that I just couldn't even believe it. And then when we got there and got out of the car, and I go, I can't believe I just did that drive. And then that was only 30 miles. And then every day, like you said, from then on, 120 and 50 miles. Every day we did it.
Yeah, it's been quite the experience. I'm glad I got to be a part of it. I'm glad I got to see you in your high school car. And I got a lot of video of you in your high school car, just in dreamland on the Autobahn.
And so everybody says, well, what tape, you know, because they gave me a box of 8-track tape. They go, what tapes, you know, were you listening to? And ABBA or whatever it was. And I said, that car is so loud on the side, I couldn't hear anything. When they dipped the body, they took the pillows out of the headliner. And so with 48, it's a direct pipeline to the headlight, into the interior. And all I'm hearing is carburetors. For 4 days, I heard that.
So it's like a megaphone letting your car.
Oh, loud car. And that's the part the ears were ringing. So, it was all the senses. It was the feel of the velour and the comfort of the seats. It was the power that had. It was the sound of the Webers and the backlash when you back off on the transmission, and the evil handling of it and sketchy things that happen. And it just, the horn didn't work. Luckily, I had a headlight and wipers were, so it was one of those. I kept telling myself, I can get this car to Shimon.
One way or another.
It may be stumbling and bumbling around, but I will get it there.
And we got to give a hand to Kirsten Clock.
Yeah,
that opened up their shop when we were in the Netherlands. You were able to go by there and you did a little. You guys tried to dial in the steering.
Yeah, the night before, the car started changing the handling. The steering box kept getting tighter, stiffer, and it was becoming more of a fight at freeway speed to control the car. Was the big lorries coming by in the crosswind, and then the alignment was such that it had tow out on the right, and it would be, as you go by these big trucks on your right, it would start sucking me in, and I had to fight it to get away from these cars. And a couple of times I was swapping lanes. The Schwimmer can tell you that it was a couple of times I thought I was going to lose. And so it was, I told Russell, I said, we got to do something about this front end. I do not want to wreck this car because I like air. And he goes, don't worry about it. So this deal came up. We went to their shop, put it on the voice. They opened up the steering box, put fluid in it. We worked it back and forth, loosened it up. And then you took some of the tow out in. And I said, okay. And I drove it around the block. I said, yeah, it's much better. And that's the way I drove it into Chimay. And it's still got some issues. It still has some camber problems, but you're it here.
Yeah, we're probably, I think this trip so far is probably close to 600 miles, about 565 miles. And with a couple of detours and backtracks and picking up some parts and pieces from other cars. Yeah. I mean, all in all, it's been a pretty successful trip.
I'm amazed. I really figured that, the green car, Dave Rhodes' car, at the end, it's got a clutch ratio gearbox, 10.5 to 1. And that one, finally was like, we're going to put this engine on the ground so that was really the only car that really had a problem where driving it anymore, it was going to murder the motor. The white car had a speedometer cable issue, which, rectified it. Like I said, there's a couple throttle cables in the cup. And Arnie's car, it steamed that one of those the speed bumps, he tore the muffler completely off the car, and they had to fix that. So yeah, a couple of bumps and bruises, but it could have been a lot worse.
Here we are, and we've made it to EBI. We've done that trip, and now this gets wrapped up, and the car gets hauled out of here.
Yeah, because I fly home, so we're in Chimay, Belgium right now. I'm going to be flying home on Monday back to San Diego, and so the car obviously stays here. So Russell will be loading it up on his car carrier, and it goes back to Aberdeen with the rest of his cars. So we have Bill Schwimmer's car and Rick Sadler's car and Now's car. They're both been imported for this show. Now's car will be put in a container, probably at BBT, and shipped back to Japan soon. Schwimmer's car is going to go back to Tennessee. Rick's car goes to California. And so I'm thinking it's up to Russell that those three cars, the blue car and Sadler's car and Schwimmer's car, will probably all go back together. And so that the blue car will be in California was new.
So
if not,
you're talking about Sapphire Blues.
Yeah,
that's it. You're not getting away from it now for me. So cruising those Sapphire Blues
and trying to. Okay, so you guys, I'm sure you're thinking this is a wild story, but you try to explain this to your wife. Let me get this straight. You're building a car that you used to have, but it's not that car. It's a new car, right? Yeah, but you're not doing it in California. You're doing it where? Aberdeen, Scotland. Okay. And why are you doing this? Because we want to rebuild. And it just trying to explain it to my wife, she's just like, I can understand.
I don't get.
What is the attraction? She just doesn't get it. And, I'm finding all these goofy parts and going through this, and she's just shaking her head. You're out of here.
Well, I'm really glad that this project got done. I think it's really just something awesome. If you've got the car and if it's in town this October, you need to bring it out to one crazy weekend.
Yeah, and obviously
drive it around.
Next summer is a lot of the big events, the 60th anniversary of DKP's, 50th anniversary of the California look. So obviously that was Russell at my...
And you're a member.
Yeah, and that it needed to toaster. That it needs to be there. But to me, it's when people look at that car, this is what we had. I mean, this is probably a little nicer than more, but the kind of modifications or lack of modifications, the smaller motor and the goofy window trim and stuff like that, this is exactly the way that car that was featured in February 75 looked like. Exactly. Same color, same fabric, same motor size, same manifold, same Jeep muffler, all the goofy stuff. That Dino wheels, I mean, in the last 20 years, it put 500 miles on a set of Dino wheels.
Yeah, those were the lightest wheels you could get back then.
Yeah,
were they before a BRM? They were lighter than a BRM, weren't they?
Way lighter.
But they were the theory on those is they were so thin that you had to be careful driving.
They were still, yeah, because they were 80,000th material, and so when there's the old style spinning, that 80,000 gets stretched pretty radical in the radiuses, so it becomes a lot thinner in some of those spots. And people just thought, I'm not running those reels, no way. But I never had, knock on wood, I never had any problems with them, and I drove them thousands of miles, but I never ordered them, I never had a flat with them.
You're pretty careful. I mean, I know a guy who just drove 560 miles with us,
and so
dodging lorries and potholes.
Yeah,
all that.
I've had those in the garage. In the history of those wheels is that I actually sold them Key Soon 20 some odd years ago, and then I got second thoughts. I bought them back. Those wheels have been back and forth across the Atlantic so many times.
So hold on, are these three of the original wheels that were in your car?
Yeah, and then I had to buy a fourth one for Chris Morley. Just to complete, I had to have it, and he had one, and I'm like, okay, Chris, give me your bargain price. Yeah, right.
Did you pay dearly for it?
$500
for one wheel.
For one wheel. And
how many sets of those wheels they have?
No idea. I have nobody.
Do the Schleys, or what? The Dino dinosaur made them, so it would have to do something. And then I'm sure they just farmed it out. Probably made them to order 10 sets at a time or something.
If that, yeah. And Steve Rollins, who we just reconnected here with recently, he worked at Dino Dinosaur. He's the guy that welded them together. When they put the two halves together, he's the one that tape welded them together. What was it? He basically might have been here. I don't know. But he did the welding of them. The other he goes, yeah, I weld snot out of those things. And then they went to heat treat. So I don't think they really sold that many of them, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, once word got on the street, well, don't use those wheels. They're gonna crack, or they're too thin, or they're too whatever.
People were scared, and I remember that when I first put him on that car, and people were going, they couldn't believe it. Like, I don't believe he's at those heights. You're driving around town. And yeah.
You said this motor feels fascinating.
Yep. Because I think that the Greg Tim's heads are really good heads, and I've got the Bird World Venturis in it, and I think between the Venturis and jetting it properly, because I'm sure I was way off, and those heads, they definitely accelerate quicker than my OSR, no doubt about it.
And with the stock trams, it cruises the freeway on
that 412 landing pinion, stock gears, rubber mount, it just, because there again, I had to be able to drive this car every day, and there's culprit gear race that didn't make sense to me.
And it's got a traction bar in the back.
Yeah. And I made that because the modern traction bars are a little different configuration, so I actually made my own and got the material. Chris Lopper had some extra steel, and I made my own.
But you made your own back in the day too?
No, it was a Dino.
Or was it?
Nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad we got to tell the story of your original car. The recreation of Dean Kirsten's sapphire blues. Sapphire blue. I can see, did you have a velour shirt when you wore that? It's got big lapels on it? And you're like,
It had bell bottoms, I think, Ben.
hey, ladies, sapphires on the nines.
Yeah, no, I never had that kind of stuff, but obviously it meant a lot to me back in the day. It's, that, and going to the bug-ins, and that really got me started in the industry, and so I owe that car a lot, if you will, because if it wasn't for being in the magazine and my exposure and getting to know Hot BWs, getting into publishing, and it kind of changed yearly, so.
Yeah, and what's super cool, with guys like Russell is, they love the hobby so much that they have the passion to do a project like this, because it makes it, it's another way that they can give back, because if you really think about it, you're 20 years older than Russell and I, but when you're in your mid 30s, we're in our teens and we're looking at these magazines, and it's like the stuff you're putting in the pages are things that we're falling in love with. And I think it only serves to kind of give back, to be able to create something that makes you feel the way we felt when we looked at those magazines, back in the day.
I had a funny story. This guy asked me at the show the other day, he goes, so where did these Talbot mirror? Who started that? I go, I don't know, maybe Greg Aronson, but some of the DKP guys started putting these bullet mirrors on the side. He goes, so he's looking at this car the other day, and he's looking at the Talbot mirror. He goes, so where do you decide to put it? I said, it's kind of a visual, and you adjust it, you sit in the seat and hold it out there and try to make it work. He's listening, okay. He goes, let me ask you something. Does that mirror work? And absolutely not.
It's key. You're up to me. You're kidding.
And I said, I have never found a bird for a Talbot mirror where you can actually look at it. And he goes, that's just great. So hearing you guys in the 70s show us that you got to have a Talbot mirror. You got to have it. And then we put it on, and it doesn't work. And we're like, what are we doing wrong? And now I find out it didn't work for you guys either.
Well, and the reality is, it was probably a legal thing with you guys. If you take the side mirrors off your car, probably you're gonna get in trouble by the cops.
It's all for looks. I hate to say it. I mean, if I had to do it over again, I'd put the pair of 67 mirror back out. You could actually use.
Well, yeah. Interestingly enough, again, I want to take people back to the time during this cow look phase when this is going on, and everybody believes there's this rigid line with cow look that is 6 to 7 earlier and all this stuff. And I'm a big proponent of no, you're wrong. There was lots of 68, 69s that were running cowless, a lot of 8 spokes, a lot of 4 lug wheels, because back then it was about, if Volkswagen made something that performed better, you put it onto your car, the street car, to make it perform better. Disc brakes or whatever, use a real adapter and head, do it Ford Huts, all that stuff.
Mouth coolers.
So when you're talking about, that's like saying, tell me the 5 things that make an 80s custom. You can't, because there's 500 things, because it was wide open, but there were influences that came from whether it's other car markets or other aftermarket enthusiasts in this realm, or there's just so much, and the period of time that you're doing it in, like the velour interior, because velour was all the rage back. It's like, wow, look at this material's super fancy. So I think it's perfect to see your car out here, the pieces that are done on it, the recreation down to the dimensions of the biscuits on the board. And I mean, to obsess over something like this, to something that was maybe or maybe not that much detail you paid attention to back then, because it was your new thing and you're just happy to get Brad's upholstery or whatever. But man, I love it. I think it's so cool. I mean, nothing makes me happier than seeing your face when you're behind the wheel of that car on the freeway, man. It was a great weekend to hang out with it, get to experience all this. And again, I think, from and I'm always speaking from a hypothetical from Russ standpoint, but I think to a guy like you, to guys like us, you've been doing so much. I mean, when we first meet guys like you, we don't have a car that's been featured, and you don't have any of that kind of stuff, and we're just kind of coming up. It's like, oh, hey, that's the guy from Hot BW's magazine. Let's talk to him. That's, and then we become friends with you, and then it's, it's just one of these things that to find out even better that you're not just a photographer, you're an enthusiast in the hobby, and you love the hobby, And I'm sure from your standpoint, that's kind of ebbed and flowed to some degree because sometimes they seem like a job. But here you are now, 50 years later, taking all this time away from family and doing this thing like you're 22 again to drive almost 600 miles across Europe in a recreation of your car. I think, listen, I can't even imagine what it would be like for me to see one of my first cars that I thought was long gone and been gone away forever, and to re-experience, like walking up and seeing it again. It's like almost like a dream.
I know I drove Russell and Gavin and Sam raised it because of bad the details there, and Russell still gives me crap about it because the other day I was looking at the deck and it didn't have a locking deck lid on it, and I'm like, oh, that's wrong. So I went in the swap meet here at Chimay and I found an NLS one with keys. And so Thursday I come up to him and he goes, I bought you something. I hand it to him and this stuff. Oh, not, he just bars. Does it ever stop? And I go, well, I have more. And so these things on the pile I see already, they just, okay, I got to fix that front hood's an early hand. It's not a stainless hand. And I was looking for one I couldn't find, and so I kind of obsess on some of this stuff, but we're real close right now.
Yeah, and so to thank the guys that really had a big part of this.
It was this crew that incredible. I know there's professional car restorers that you pay big money they restore your car and they throw you the keys and you drive it home and it's fine. But to have a car with all these goofy parts and stuff and jump in it and do what we just did with just a minimal of little tweaks here and there, I'm over the moon. I didn't expect it to be that. Like we got here as clean as we did.
Well, it sounds to me like something irresponsible that you would have done 15 years ago. So it only suits the occasion, and I think it's awesome. It's been a great week. Thanks to and Gavin's with Trailer Queen Restoration.
Yes.
So give him a shout out for that.
His wife and his son were here, and we went through rains. It was all full of mud, and when they saw the car and they go, what are you going to, we're going to, at first I was like, God, this is beyond the spray wax. I said, I'm going to have to give this thing a bath. And they chip right in on it. So we got a bucket, these sponges, and just washing this and sponging it right here at the show. And they're all three of them are full throttle in getting this car clean. And he's detailing the paint. And they really got into this project.
Yeah. And who did the upholstery?
Sam Trigg did the upholstery. Yeah, and he did, like I said, Brad was good. Sam, I'm blown away at this interior. It was so good. And he followed instructions to
and of course, Ron with help with the motor. You and Ron built this motor?
Yeah. So, Ron, because I asked Ron, and he do at the Schley Museum because Paul loves having us there, and he's got a tool room and the engine room. So I told Russell, I said, we want to do this motor together. And so I talked to Rob at MP, and I told him what we were doing, and I said, I think use all MP parts because it's a nostalgic motor, so it's going to be kind of a combination of Italy and late stuff. And they said, sure, MP would love to work with you on that. So and then Shin said, yeah, I would love to have the story, and we'll Dino at the last part. And so everybody was on board with it. And then when the engine got done at MP, I freighted it up, and Russell air freighted that engine, go to Aberdeen, and plug it in.
Well, big thanks to Hot BWs. Thanks to the Schley brothers. Thanks to Ron Fleming. Thanks to MP for being on board and contributing to this project.
Yeah, they were great. Yeah, and they were, like I said, I wanted to use their new mag case. I didn't want to use an aluminum case or an old case, and that case was really good. The new magnesium cases are nice. With notes.
Well, Dean, we did it.
Yeah.
Good time.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll see it stateside.
Yeah, I think so. I think we'll see it this winter, but definitely next year. And, with the white car, the Jim Holm car, and Dave Rhodes' car, and a whole bunch of cars that have got a lot of history are going to be coming to California for the next summer. And I definitely want to be a driver. I'm not going to be driving down to area.
And next time you see Dino, make sure you say, Dino, why are you so blue? Sapphire. Hey, it's been great. Listen, you're one of my favorite guests to have on because you're a great storyteller, and B, There's so much knowledge to pick from, and I'm looking forward to you coming out and you're working on a book right now.
Yep.
And so I want everybody to get excited about this book you're working on. Can you tell us a little bit about this book?
So in recent times, my interest has gone, obviously with this 50-year-old car project, it's the history of performance in the Volkswagen industry, specifically MP and Joe Vitone and Econo Motors and the race shop. And when I did the interview with Daryl, it kind of sucked me into learning more about it and getting to know Dave Andrews, who's still alive. That there's so much that happened there. The individuals, Joel Horvath with Revmaster, that whole group. There's so much that came out of there. And the more I dug into it, I go, I need to tell this story. So I've been working on it for over a year. But as I said before, history is hard to dig this stuff out. And one of the things that I've been working on just here in the last month again is finding the inch pincher one, the very first inch pincher one body. And I think I pretty well got it down to what the story really is. And I've been chasing that for years. And I want to answer some of these questions that have just been unknown. And so I've been collecting thousands of photos and text and interviewing people and slowly but surely putting this story together about this era that basically Joe Vitone kind of created and in Riverside. And there's so much there. Like I said, it just takes time, and there's still a lot of folders that I'm trying to fill in, but slowly but surely, I think we get some answers.
So what are you thinking you might have this book put together in?
It's tough because this...
But to narrow down, this is the story of Impy. I mean, is that really the story?
All part of it.
You have a title worked out yet?
No. It is very much about Impy, but it's more about the tone, and it's about the companies and the people that grew out of that industry, and
more of the factual aspect of the evolution of the business.
Mio was the headquarters that Joe Vitone brought in from Japan. He started his own company and probably the best cylinder heads at the time. Bob Sanchez at Ford Tuned Exhaust. And Joe Vitone put him in business and freed all these exhaust systems. And then when Effie moved their manufacturing to Japan on them, then Bob created Ford Tuned Exhaust. And it just goes on. And Chas Morris, he worked for John Butera building funny cars. And he did a lot of fabrication for Daryl. And it's just, there's so many people that are so important to our growth that needs to be told. And there's so much stuff they started in Riverside.
And I think you're going to need in this book, whether it be in the front or the back, I think you're going to need a flow chart, starting with Impy, the division.
Yeah,
the guys.
That would actually make sense, the family tree, if you will.
Yeah, because it's really, as I've been doing the podcast, obviously when I have conversations with you and we get a little insight on Brad's interiors or the painter Becker who does the paint, like all these names that will soon be lost to history if we don't preserve them. And through the hobby of this, I mean, honestly, probably for Joe Vitone, it's just a business, right? But what he didn't realize, and what nobody really realizes in a business is when you're doing something, but with the automotive culture, anything that becomes something sacred to us or something that we pursue becomes something nostalgic after a while. And then it's something that will, like these, from a business standpoint, Johnny Speed and Chrome, for example, wasn't the most populated place from all the quality people. You talk to anybody who grew up in the 80s, they searched for Johnny Speed and Chrome stuff. So it's this whole thing where a business, by way of it just being to service a certain demographic, becomes something that is sought after and becomes a piece of nostalgia. And so what's cool is the business side is indirectly creating all this undercurrent of these enthusiasts, but the business in and of itself, because of the timing of the market, that creates such a buzz and creates businesses. I did 14 exhausts and things like that. So I think that's just such a cool aspect. So yeah, I'd be excited to see the family tree.
So I'm working on it now that the blue car is done. And I still have some more work to do on the Dave Andrews car, but that's really what I need to do is, I hate to say it, get out of the garage for a while and get behind the typewriter, if you like, and to start putting these chapters together. I've got probably 3 or 4 chapters done, and I've got reams of notes and tapes of interviews, and I just need to start picking these stuff apart. I was able to finally break through and get a good contact with the Peterson Publishing Archives, and they had some fabulous photos of views of inside Empty and the body shop that I've never seen. They weren't in the catalog. I've never seen them before, and I was finally able to buy the rights to the stores. And so I've got photos that actually shows what the shops look like inside the workshops where they built this stuff, and it shows people working on stuff. And it's stuff that I saw, and it took me over a year just to get a photo of somebody and say, what is it going to take for me to use these photos in a book? Yeah, it took me a long time, but I finally got it. So I got a couple of handfuls of photos that are just the best. And they were in Hot Rod 65. And
A lot of pictures people haven't seen.
But it just, the amount of work that it takes to find photos is,
yeah. I mean, it's a hard job, especially for things that aren't digitally cataloged. And most people you meet today don't want to deal with having to track that stuff down. So, Dino, I'm looking forward to talking to you next before the book comes out so we can talk about the book. You're going to give us a couple insights, leaving some cliffhangers, and we're going to help you launch this book when it contains. All right. Hey, man, great talking to you.
okay, well, it's a pleasure.
If you like that podcast, and I know you probably did, share it with your friends. Copy and paste whatever you're listening to. Post it on your Facebook, share it on your Instagram, and share Let's Talk Dubs with your VW community. There's a lot of cool history. And I know some of you guys never listened to podcasts before, and once you started listening, you got really addicted. So it's a great hobby to have. One day I'll do a podcast and just share a bunch of my favorite podcasts that I listen to, because I really, with us living in a crazy world with so much time commitments and stress on time, podcasts are a great way to just pinpoint and listen to exactly what you want to hear rather than just listen to noise. And I'm a guy that always seems to be having to listen to something. So I appreciate you guys for listening. Support our sponsors, VW Trends Magazine, a magazine for the people, by the people. Go check them out today. I just got my latest issue today, so go check it out. The latest issue of VW Trends Magazine. Also, Ross Wolf, high quality aftermarket parts built for the people, by the people. It is VW enthusiasts to the core that are building these parts, and not for profit, but to do and commit to building better quality stuff for the hobby. So Jared and Jason, they've got their sights set on building good quality parts for people, and they don't need to do it to feed their family. Their focus is to try to make sure they're building and bringing quality parts. The R&D, the effort and energy that they put into committing to building parts, and they'll be down at One Crazy Weekend. So make sure you guys stop in, say hey to those guys, as well as any of our other select few vendors that will be at One Crazy Weekend. So guys, it's great. If you notice on that podcast, there was a little bit of a robotic sound. Well, I got to give a shout out to Adobe. I was listening to the podcast as I was running it back and recording the podcast. We were in the Cowlook tent that was at EBI, and it was crazy because there was so much background noise, and the angle of the microphones where it was picking up all kinds of stuff. And I had a little earbud in, and I'm trying to adjust the gains, and it had, and it just wasn't picking up Dean's voice. And so I processed the audio through, and some of you guys with a sharp ear picked it up. But I processed it through enhanced speech, Adobe. And I'll tell you what, man, it made I saved the Richie King podcast with that. So, sometimes you have a little technical difficulty when you're in a loud space and recording some stuff, and you're just thinking, what the heck, we're going to go for it. But I got to give a shout out to enhanced speech. You know, life's too short to listen to bad podcasts, and this made it much more enjoyable. And I'm only giving a shout out because I was thinking as I clicked on this, and I was stressing out going over this podcast, you know, trying to dial in the audio. And then I just said, oh yeah, let me throw it through the enhanced speech. And I'm telling you, it made it 150 times better with not having to do a bunch of stuff. Now you can hear a little bit of the digital processing in it if you're really listening carefully to it. But I'll tell you, it is so much more listenable this way. And there's so many podcasts out there that people do that the audio is pure trash. And it's just like, Even this one wasn't perfect, but I'll tell you right now, it's worth the effort to do it. So anyway, guys, I'm excited for One Crazy Weekend. We're only a couple months away. Lots of big things happening. Shout out to my guys at Spike's Vintage Restoration up there in the UK. Chris, Jay, Andy, Megan, Dee Dee, everybody there that's putting in all their effort to get the Gia done. Right now, it's a full court press. I'm going to put out a third video that's going to limit what I get to see because Andy's not letting me see the car complete. So there's a couple things that we're waiting to debut on the car that'll be debuted when the car's seen for the first time, which I'm going to be excited about. I'm even going to pick the car up. I'm going to go with some friends to Texas to pick the car up. I'm not allowed to see the car, so I'll have my friends load the car in the trailer and cover it with a car cover. I've committed on a pinky swear that I won't be looking at the car. I won't be checking it out. Andy wants to see my expression when I see the car completed for the first time. The bits and pieces I have seen, the quality work that they deliver, my ideas that I've contributed to the project, which they're all my ideas. Sometimes Spike gives me a little push this way, then I push back, and then we come up with a happy medium. But I'll tell you right now, I'm blown away at the progress the project is making, how fast it got done. In addition to, he had a lot of reservations on ideas that I had. And as he started seeing the ideas come together, him and the team over there really were surprised because I'm coming out of left field with some of this stuff. And so it was definitely something that not a lot of people were ready for. So, it's not over the top. It's just enough to know that this car has a theme that goes throughout this car. So there's a ton of guys that are going to be coming into town for this. If you're thinking about coming to One Crazy Weekend, do not hesitate. It's going to be a great time. I'm going to make sure George is forcing me to be freed up, so I won't be dealing with registration. I won't be dealing with any of that stuff. We'll have a staff do that. I'm going to do as much pre-reg. When you sign it, when you walk in and you've pre-reg, you're getting your goodie bag, you're getting all set up. And then hopefully you're doing everything for the poke run, everything online. This way it's going to go super smooth, super fast. And everybody will get what they're supposed to have right when they check in. And everything will just be waiting for times to say go. So I'm excited, guys. It's going to be a great, great October here. This is the October surprise everybody's looking for. So anyway, guys, without taking up too much more of your time, hopefully you guys enjoying the podcast. Give me a 5-star review so I can give you a shout out. I do have a shout out for this week. Josh Turner. Before I left for Europe, my girl that was working for me was supposed to send out some shirts. She didn't send them out. So Josh, appreciate your patience, man. Your shirt got sent out. You should be listening to it. You should be wearing it as you're listening to this podcast. And if you guys picked up some merch from Let's Talk Dubs, go on your Instagram, tag Let's Talk Dubs. Let me see you in your merch. You never know. If I see you at a car show, I'm calling you out. Some of you guys don't know what I look like, but I was at when I was over there in Bad Camberg, and I saw the Darrens, bro, the 2 Darrens from Ireland rocking some Let's Talk Dubs gear. I saw Big Darren. I said, yo, good looking shirt, bro. And he was like, I know that voice. And so we came over, started rapping and kicking it, and I had a special gift for everybody that I saw. So I brought a pocket full of stuff that nobody else has. They're not for sale. I gave out some keychains, some poker chips from last year's One Crazy Weekend, as well as some stickers and stuff. So that's kind of what I do, man. When I'm at some of these car shows, I carry some special, I have these keychains, these little time micro keychains. I won't say it's a mistake that they were ordered awkwardly small, but it's not to take away from your vehicle. It's just to accent your keys. And I have these keychains, and I thought, you know what I got to do with these? I'm going to give these, like these, they're not for sale. You're given to them. They're given to you as a gift from me. If I see you at a show, if you recognize me, or if you say what's up. So something just to make life a little bit more cool. But George and I'll be doing a podcast coming up, a little roundtable on what's going on. Some of you guys love it. Some of you guys hate it. But you know what? I like it. So we're doing it. Most people love it. So also wanted to give a shout out. I guess a year ago, Night Stalker, Chris Walker, Night Stalker Customs, he did custom Hot Wheels. He had passed away. And I saw that. I happened to be cruising on Facebook somehow. And I didn't even recognize it. Apparently about a year ago, he passed away. So shout out to the Walker family, for a guy that was just super talented. He's the guy that wrote the book on the Hot Wheels, the ultimate guide to the VW drag buses. So pick up that book. I'm sure his family gets some money from that. It's a cool book to have. I tried to get him on the podcast. He was a bit shy to come on the podcast. Kind of worked him over a couple of times and he didn't get him on, but he did do the rendering of the Bull Run bus in a 21 window. And I mean, did it, and it looks so clean, and I have it in a little glass case. I did an unboxing on my Instagram a couple years ago, and I got that, man. You know, one of the things I wanted to tell you guys about is there's some guys out there that are just still artisans and they do stuff. And I think it was like $50 for this Hot Wheel. And somebody was like, oh, you'd spend $50 on a Hot Wheel. But it was like a Hot Wheel that was made custom to mine. I mean, it's got twist wheels on it. It's got everything. And, you know, these people that do these hand done things, they're real craftspeople. They're the craftsmen, and support those people that do that kind of stuff in the hobby, because it's really worth it, you know, to get something that's hand done. I also happen to have a picture on my wall. It's an illustration done by Steve Anderson, who does a lot of the stuff for Excellence Magazine, a lot of the car renders. Anyway, he passed away a few years ago. So it's two things that I have that were custom done by people that are no longer here. And it's just something cool. And I think when it all comes down to things like little keepsakes here and there, you know, there'll always be something that could be a family heirloom going on, because it's a one of one, and it's something that was custom built to represent something at a point in time in history that was meaningful to you, and it may be meaningful to your kids and your grandkids. Who knows? Whatever. One day. Anyway, I'm blathering. But I was looking at my diecast on my desk here today, and I just started thinking about Chris Walker and his skill set. So rest in peace, brother, and Godspeed his family. So, and with that, guys, we're wrapping up the podcast. Go out in the garage, work on something, get yourself a little closer to getting your car finished and showing up at One Crazy Weekend. And until next week, guys, later.